Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Beautiful snow out there.
It is.
Okay, so I'm going to go through and just make sure that I have everyone that's on the call right now. I have Mike Burns, John Gillivan, Jim Marcolano, Linda Vonderheide, Valerie Dean, Jennifer Hogan, Lindsay Garney, Lisa Wallen, Jesse Vogel, Zach Powell, Lynn Wilkuski, Rogerio Rodriguez, Tina Carton, Nate Owens. We also have, oh, now I need to change my screen so I can see everyone. Jordan, Jen Bigiani.
Ivan Ramos, if you,
Okay.
I hope.
And Jeanette and Rima. Okay. I think and James Rath. I think I have everyone. If I didn't get you and you want to send me a note in the chat, please feel free to do that. Good morning. Happy February. Obviously, we are still virtual, and the CDTC office remains closed for right now, but we are hoping that things are, moving in the right direction and that we can start planning for, hopefully this summer, planning for more in-person types of meetings or events, but we will keep everyone updated. No big updates related to COVID. I know some communities are starting to prepare for the summer and deciding whether or not to do outdoor dining or open streets or play streets. If anyone has questions about this, please feel free to reach out. We do have a resource page on our website, along with links to information on how to do a shared street, a play street, outdoor dining, and we'd be happy to help with that. So today we have a presentation on the Glenville Trails Plan, and Mike Burns from the town of Glenville will be leading us through that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Mike, if you want, you can start sharing your screen and I will hand it off to you.
Okay, I will. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I will give this a shot. And I do have quite a bit of material. Lynn Wilkuski, I know that you are also on this call, so help me out if I'm missing anything, please. She keeps us on the straight and narrow in her office. A little history about me. I'm with the town of Glenville's planning department. And I've been there for now going on about 18 years. That's a long time, but it's been, I think, very productive time. And what we just did over the past year and a half was to prepare a Glenville Greenway Trails Plan. And I'm going to show you a bunch of slides. I'll go through them as quickly as I can, but I'd be interested in your questions or thoughts about our process and actually the recommendations that resulted from this plan. So like I said, it went a year and a half, and help me out here. Why can't I change the screen?
Do you have your presentation open?
I do. I can do it this way. So anyway, we did this. This was funded through. I'm sorry.
Oh, this is Tina. Do you have two displays? Do you have two monitors?
No, I don't. I'm working from a laptop in my dining room. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
And hopefully the VPN won't conk out, which has been doing that crazy on me. It's been a tough time. So I'll do the best I can. Can you all see the screen?
Well, we can't see, no, all we see is like your file. But if you stop sharing and you open up the file and then start sharing again, it might work.
Okay.
Otherwise, you can always email it to me and I can share it, and then you can tell me to move it forward.
Why I have it open on my laptop, but you folks can't see it? Why not? All right, let me, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Open. Nah, that's not going to help.
We've
All right,
had-
well,
we-
let me send it to you.
Okay,
It's going to take a second or so.
no problem.
And while I do that, I can tell you about it, and then we'll fly through the slides, I believe, anyway. And sorry about that. Let's see. No. All right, it's on its way around the world.
Jan, I'm seeing names on here that I don't recognize. Do we have new people, like a bunch of new people?
It does look like we have some people that haven't been at some previous meetings. Yeah, we do. I mean, they're all familiar to CDTC. They're all CDTC friends, but they are some folks that haven't been able to be here in the last couple of months. So that is good to see. Okay, Mike, I have your presentation, so I am going
Okay.
to share my screen. Let me know if you can see it and if it's okay.
I can see it. Hopefully
Okay.
everybody else can. Oh.
Let's see if I can get the whole thing.
And can I advance slides, or do you have to do that?
I'll advance the slides. Just tell me when to go forward.
Okay. Sorry about this.
That's okay.
Okay, well, what we did was we applied for grant funding through the Empire State Development Corporation through the CFA process, and we were lucky enough to be selected for funding. That allowed us to retain a consultant to help us analyze both the Village of Scotia and the town of Glenville's potential for trails within those two communities, and more importantly, or as importantly, connections to other communities adjacent to us. Town of Glenville is one of the communities that is in Schenectady County, obviously, and is north of the Mohawk River, the only community along with Scotia. So it's kind of unique in that way, but we're also close by. You can go to the next slide. Close by to, and keep going to the next one, please.
Sure.
That's fine. Where we would take advantage of the Empire Trail, which is right near us, and formerly the Hudson Mohawk Bike Hike Trail, and also the Zim Smith Trail and connections that are in Clifton Park and north of us. One of the first steps we did was we put together a study advisory committee, and these are the folks that were on that. We tried to include as many as possible. One of the benefits of being in Scotia and Glenville, as in many communities, there are a lot of people who really want to get involved. And you'll see this list is fairly limited because we wanted to still make it manageable. But these are the folks that were really the heart and center of the process, as well as the consultants. So it was trouble picking the committee members. You can see it's kind of bloated toward the town of Glenville folks. That may be a bias in the study. I'm not sure if that's the right word or not. But we obviously wanted to make sure that we had other people involved from the funding agency and from CDTC, Schenectady County, and the village. Next slide, please. The following, after the selection of the committee, we did a request for proposals, and we decided to We advertised across the state in the contract reporter, and we ended up receiving 7 extremely competitive proposals. It was very difficult to select a most qualified consultant. We ended up with Bean Consultants and a subcontractor, Chazen Engineering. And this presentation that we're going through right now is one from that they developed. I'm using their slides, or Jen is. And it was from a public meeting that occurred in January, really just prior to the pandemic shutting things down. So you can go to the next slide, please. These are the goals that we decided upon. We wanted to provide essentially linkages, safe linkages between all of these different amenities that are in the communities. Next slide, please. Again, we all know these things to be factual. We just wanted to verify them with some dollars. Next slide, please. And this was the schedule that we went on. You'll notice in the 4th bullet where we developed the plan. It was in the winter, spring. That was in the middle of the pandemic. So we had intended to do another presentation before the final one that would have been open to the public. And we did do that through electronic media, but you can see the problem where I'm unable to present things. I'm not sure how to do that, but we did do that, and it was fairly well participated in. And we think the results were pretty good. Excuse me. The final presentation was then done to our town board just recently, and they did that to present the draft final report. You can go to the next slide, please. We'll rip through these ones pretty quickly, but if you want to take a look, the consultants prepared just visuals of types of different trails that we can look at through different communities. And if you want to go through, I can really quickly, there's probably 5 or 6 slides, Jen. Again, bicycle trails, probably 10 foot wide. Next slide, please. Again, walking paths on the side of a highway with barriers, obviously, for protection of the users. Next slide, please. This one is actually built already. It's in Collins Park. The Mohawk River's on the left side in the village of Scotia. So it's got a nice separation, tree lined. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. Next slide, please. Sidewalks. Village of Scotia has a great sidewalk system, criticized occasionally because of lack of maintenance, particularly in wintertime. Folks don't shovel the sidewalks, but there are ways around that. Next slide, please. And the next one is to show how you can do a bike route that's existing. And then next slide, please. Some improvements that make it a dedicated bicycle lane. Next slide, please. And this is an example of another system where you can put an on-street bicycle lane. Next slide, please. Again, these were used just to get people thinking about where possibilities could be and how to do these, incorporate them into existing facilities. Next slide, please. Go to the next one. As I said, I've been with Glenville for quite a while, and Glenville is really lucky to have 2 planners and a full-time planning staff with support from an executive secretary. And these, through the years, are some of the plans that Glenville has prepared. Many of these, I can point out a couple of them. The Freeman's Bridge Road Complete Streets Plan, that's a linkage study, as are the Freeman's Bridge Road Master Plan and the Town Center Master Plan. So we've joined forces with CDTC over many years to prepare these different plans, and all of them hold some type of information about trails. Next slide, please. What we were trying to do was to also incorporate the recent Capital Trails Plan, where you can see Glenville is kind of in the center with the Oh, I guess it's, next slide, please, and it'll tell me the name. The Veterans Trail from Saratoga County, the Ballston Veterans Trail, which is labeled as M, and the Mohawk Hudson Bike Hike Trail, which I guess now is the Empire Trail. So we're right kind of in the middle of things. Next slide, please. This was a plan for a multi-use path that was part of the Freeman's Bridge Road, two studies, actually. The Complete Streets Feasibility Analysis, which resulted in a TIP project that we are trying to advance now through design for a multi-use path and a sidewalk. Next slide, please. This was from an image of Freeman's Ridge Road, the lower portion. And if you do the next slide, please, it was an idea that incorporates the multi-use path, which is in the tip. At the lower right-hand side is a trail, and it'll be in the next slide, please, that shows what's left of a path. And some of you may recognize the sign on the right from the Land and Water Conservation Fund. This pathway runs from the Freeman's Bridge Road all the way to the village of Scotia. And what we're trying to do in the last slide, there was some green infrastructure improvements to retain and treat a stormwater runoff from the lower portion of Freeman's Bridge Road that empties directly into the Mohawk River. And actually, I'm putting the finishing touches on the grant application now for the Green Infrastructure Grant Program through Environmental Facilities Corporation to fund those improvements in conjunction with the multi-use path along Freeman's Ridge Road. So there's a lot going on. Next slide, please. We were awarded funding to upgrade the path you see in shadowing, as well as some funding for Safe Routes to School through DEC and the Climate Smart Communities program. So like I said before, Glenville is very lucky that we've got 2 full-time planners. We have the resources to submit all these applications with the matching funds, which are crucial. A lot of times that's staff in-kind services, but also a lot of times there's cash match. And so we're lucky in that we have those resources available to help us along the way. Next slide, please. This is a recently completed path along Glen Ridge Road, which the town did probably about 2 years ago, and we picked a slide showing the folks at Halloween, do a little trick-or-treating. Next slide, please. So you can do successes with this stuff. It just takes time. This map here shows some of the problems with all the plans. We've got a lot on our plate. So what we tried to do, next slide please, was prioritize through the meetings and narrow it down to something that we could budget for, which would be the second bullet, 3 highest priority trail connections. And if you want to go to the next slide, I hope anyway, in the public meeting, the consultants had breakout groups, which is always a nice thing to do, where people gave their opinions on maps provided by the consultants as to where they wanted to see improvements. And so then they would do a presentation, very brief, at the end of the meeting to summarize, and that was all cooked down by the consultants into more maps. Next slide, please. You can go through the next one. And these were some of the maps that we show. What I wanted to point out here is on most of the activity in Glenville is on the right side of your screen, which is East Glenville. That's where the developed area of Glenville is. And it's all suburban in nature. A lot of cul-de-sacs and dead ends, no connections between many of the neighborhoods. So most people have to use Route 50 to get out to the commercial core, which we call our town center. The other route would be Swaggertown Road. And what we tried to do with the trails was to connect some of the parks that we have, the light green areas in both the village and the town, and with the employment centers, the town center or the industrial park, which is actually west of the village, so we can provide alternative modes of transportation, walking, bicycling, or even e-bikes if we get to that. We've seen a few of them in town, not too many so far. And then when you get to the western part of the town, that's what you refer to usually in the weather channels and as the Glenville Hill. It's an elevation of probably less than 1,000 feet, but it's more rural, very, very much more rural. And so we didn't see as much need for trails there, although I wanted to point out the pink line on the far left. That's actually what we have been calling the Long Path Trail, which is a linkage. It's being worked on as we speak. If any of you are familiar with it, it actually runs, I believe, from the George Washington Bridge down by New York City, and it goes through Thatcher Park, first through the Schoharie Valley, Thatcher Park, and then eventually the plan is to bring it up to Northville, where it would meet with the Northville Placid Trail. So that's for hiking purposes. It's usually along rural roads right now, but it's interesting that that's also available in the town of Glenville. So next slide, please. Village of Scotia is what you're looking at now, and we did try to include trails there. Most of the village has sidewalks, but you can see the large blocks on the upper left-hand corner. That's the Scotia Glenville Business and Technology Park. It's a major employer in the capital region. We want to make sure that we provide alternative modes of transportation for those folks too. Next slide, please. And this one here again is just a showing the eastern portion of town. Next slide, please. And you can go to the next slide. These were the final steps in the process. I had a few other slides that I did want to show, but I've probably taken enough time already. I don't know how we're doing on time, but I'd really like to hear your questions if you have any. I know I've run through a ton of stuff. One of the interesting things that our consultant set up for us was to rate and rank all of the trails that were listed as a result from the public information meeting. And that resulted in about 25 segments of trails, and they came up with a 1 through 10 scoring based on all these things. And I can share these with Jen so she can give them to anybody who's interested. And that exercise took me about 2.5 to 3 hours to complete. And like I said, I've lived in the community and worked here for 18 years, so I know most of these segments pretty well, and it still took me that long to rate and rank all of them. And what we did was boil them down to 3, essentially. One, which is from the town center to what we call the dog park along Van Buren Road, very busy traveled highway with no pedestrian facilities at all. So that's going to be our number 1 facility. And we get cost estimates. The other thing that you always consider, and you can go to the next slide, I think this just says thank you on it. But the cost of these facilities is what really is troubling. By the time you get into right-of-way acquisition, maneuvering around underground utilities, above-ground utilities, street trees, and making sure that the thing is ADA compliant, some of the costs you're going to run into for the first segment that we agreed upon was over $1 million. And that's quite a bit of funding, given the priorities that have, I think, changed at this time, where prior to this starting, we were all in a different mode, really, where we were, everybody gathering together and stuff, and now we've had a social distance. But I'd like to say that if any of you have been out over the summer to hike or bike or paddle, you've certainly noticed that there have been way more people enjoying the outdoors. So the emphasis, I think, should still be on trying to fund these pathways and trails and sidewalks. We may have learned to socially distance, but we can certainly be outdoors and enjoy the assets that we all have around us in the capital region. And so with that, without taking more of your time for your meeting, I'll answer what questions you may have, if any. And I thank you.
Thanks, Mike. If anyone wants to ask a question, please feel free. You can either put it in the chat or unmute yourself. There was a good comment, Mike, early on in the presentation that the aerial image of the town was really nice and kind of.
Thank you.
Yeah. gave a good illustration of the character of the town. I think Jeanette has a question.
Yes,
Hi.
Jeanette.
I do. Hi there, Mike. Thanks for the presentation. That's exciting
welcome.
because I'm all about like connecting all of these upstate towns together, so I can see that happening. You had 7 plans that you presented. That those are just plans. How many of those actually made it to fruition as far as being then developed and then implemented as plans, if you have that?
Many of them have had bits and pieces of them over the years implemented. And when I say that, for example, the recent study we concluded with the Department of State's assistance, we called the Freeman's Bridge Road Gateway Revitalization. You know, all these have these fancy names, but it asked for the town to consider amending its zoning ordinance so that it would include mixed-use development and pedestrian bicycle features in those mixed uses. Because Freeman's Bridge Road is in a transition. It's opposite the what used to be called the Alco site in Schenectady, the heavy industrial site that has now been changed over into mixed-use apartments, services, businesses, the casino resort. And so what we're trying to do is emulate that type of development where we can have a mixture of higher density uses on the property. So that's one good example of where the town board, that was recommended in the study, and the town board went ahead and developed the new zoning legislation, and it has been adopted. And so we're working toward that. The TIP project is a direct result of the Complete Streets Linkage Program. So that's another example. In the town center, we've amended zoning based upon our town center master plan to incorporate more mixed uses up there. So a lot of these things have been actually put into fruition. Now, it's a lengthy process, and you have to keep plugging forward as you go along. It's also, it can be expensive, and you have to keep reminding as new folks come along that these are the plans, and yes, it may need updating, but you know, keep you know, the feet to the fire and keep moving forward. So in short, you know, things have been moving forward and most of these things. A lot of it depends on funding, obviously.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just had a follow-up thought, not a question. And this may go to CDTC or whoever is the funding agency. You know, like, is it possible to, when all of these studies are being, you know, asked to be done, or people are putting in applications to get a study done, is it possible to say, yeah, like you guys have to stick with this and eventually change something with it, like make it happen? I don't know, just in my 20-year history of involvement, I see a lot of things not getting to fruition and the studies just collecting dust on the shelves, only to have a very similar study done by another planning agency or outfit. So like, how can we have that you know, the continuous vision and carry it through to fruition? It feels like it needs to be at the beginning of when it starts.
Well, I think one of the answers, as I indicated earlier on, was through the use of a regional organization or organizations such as the Regional Planning Board here, the Planning Commission, and CDTC. Those are fantastic groups that have been around for longer than I've been in the Capital Region, and they have volumes of libraries. And so to listen to their staff and to promote the things that they have in their new visions plans, those are the types of things. If you look at their new visions plans over the years as it's been updated, and then these plans that we hire consultants to do, they really mirror one another. So those values and goals and objectives are pretty much consistent in all those plans. And I think it's upon us as the folks who serve on these committees to remind them, hey, whoa, you know, there was a study done in X year, which, you know, we paid a lot of money for all this stuff, taxpayer dollars, and we want them to be, I guess, municipal or case specific, if that's the right term. I don't know. But at the same time, a lot of the goals and objectives are all going to be similar as you go from one community to the next. And so I would rely on the regional planning boards and those types of things. And you can even go down to groups like for water quality, Trout Unlimited, or water quality committees, or soil and water conservation groups. There are multiple groups out there. They just need to be engaged, I think. They're all busy, but there are things that they can still do. And don't forget the university systems that we have around here. UAlbany or RPI, they all have interns that we can use, and programs that we can also use to avail and show that we're all kind of marching in the same direction. Long answer, huh?
Mike, I thought that was a good response. I'd also just add that CDTC, we don't initiate any projects, but we try to provide support to any community that's interested in moving their trail projects forward. And we do, when there is funding available and people propose projects and we evaluate them, we kind of integrate into our methodology, projects that have plans, projects that have continually moved forward, and project sponsors that have been successful in implementing these projects. So, we try to keep these projects moving forward. Sometimes funding is always uncertain. Also, like legislation is always uncertain, but even when available funding is not available or reduced, we always try to make kind of like these incremental, we try to make incremental progress regardless, but we do try our best to continue to talk about these plans and keep this on the top of everyone's mind. Things may change, there may be a new development that completely changes the circumstances for a trail, but we do try to move these forward as best as we can.
Let me add a couple of thoughts, if I may. This is Ivan Vamos. The long path has been worked on for probably a little bit more than 50 years, which is my experience. But some of these trails, like the Appalachian Trail, have been worked on. This is the 100th year of it coming up next year. So they take a while, but they usually get done. We've gotten as far as Thatcher Park with the long path. New York, New Jersey Trail Conference has done most of that, but ADK, Adirondack Mountain Club, has done a lot of the your area in its rather formative stage. Also, you could work with New York State Parks because they have a funding source. We can give you contacts there. Chris Morris mainly, and they can help you move it along. Admittedly, not the first thing that I would even suggest you work with, but it's something you can get to in time. Last but not least, I've had the opportunity to give talks at the schools and the school systems in the middle of Scotia. They have a very consolidated set of school buildings there, and working with the people that are working with safe routes to school might be a way of extending the system or making the existing system that have some sidewalks and the like more amenable to a walking community, which it is. Thank you. It's a good presentation.
Thank you. One other thought I had for Jeanette was that, and I forgot this when answering your, what do you do to stop a plan from sitting on the shelf? Each community usually has a planning and zoning commission or a planning board, and they are required to have a certain number of hours of training. And so, the Regional Planning Board has, they used to have their training at the Hudson Valley Community College, but it wouldn't be a bad idea maybe to have, if there's a local planner or just someone to remind them that, these plans are adopted and you need to take a look at them, take them home with you, or take a look at them every now and then periodically to refresh their memories, because sometimes there's a lot of turnover on a planning board. And so to keep reminding those people that part of their job is to not only make sure the zoning is in sync with a comp plan, but to know what's in that comp plan, and also the smaller area plans, linkage studies and whatnot that evolve, so that they're all aware of what is approved in those by their local legislative body. And I'll be quiet.
Jen, I had one more question if we have time.
Sure. Can I first, there's a couple of questions in the chat I wanted to get to real quick. And then if you can go after that, Tina. So Jen had asked, how did your regional trails connections rate connecting to Clifton Park, to the Zim Smith Trail, etc.? Because you talked about
actually, yeah, the Outlaws area was number 2, which from Outlaws is a hamlet in the far eastern portion of Glenville, and the connection there would be with the Ballston Veterans Trail, and also over into Rexford, where the Rexford Bridge was replaced, 5-6 years ago, or maybe even longer. But there's a wonderful connection there to the Empire Trail, the Mohawk Hudson Bike Hike Trail, and then further into Clifton Park. So that one rated very well. The third priority was along New York State Route 50, which is a designated bicycle route that over the years hasn't received much TLC. So that was the third one. And then after that, there are a bunch of them in there, which we're going to have to still go through over the years as time permits.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, Tina, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. The question I had for you, Michael, is in these studies that you've been working on, are you including maintenance cost, future maintenance cost, and upkeep for the trail system? So we do the feasibility studies, we get grants for the infrastructure, but one of the large concerns we're getting from our community is what is the ongoing maintenance cost going to be for all this added infrastructure?
The answer is yes, and you could probably hear our Department of Public Works superintendent screaming right now, because that is an enormous issue and it's a huge lift for our community. The recent study we had did try to quantify that in terms of existing equipment, existing personnel, and then also associated costs for new equipment, maintenance of that equipment, and also what we would need for new personnel. And the cost, I don't have exact figures in front of me right now, but I do have that analysis in the final report, and I can share that with you, and it gets very expensive. And that's just for the people and the equipment. It's not for, if you have a storm wash out culverts or the pathway or something like that, that's added cost. So yeah, that's a major issue. Like I said, our superintendent of public works, right now, when it snows, we have one individual riding in a tractor with a snowblower on it, trying to clear the snow from the sidewalks in our town center. And we may have concluded that so far we've reached our limit unless we hire more people, and that has a whole bunch of other issues in terms of collective bargaining, and it goes on down the line. It gets very expensive, so it's a huge issue.
Yeah. Have you also thought about, and this is something that comes up also as a union issue, like Friends of Trails? I don't know if any other community has that, but we're all under these budget constraints. Yet I get pushback, especially dealing with union bargaining on using volunteer labor and help to assist in some of this.
As to my knowledge, we have not had that issue yet, but I can see it might possibly be an issue. These were the areas that really, because of the pandemic, we didn't get to have an internal focus group on that yet. And that's something that needs to be followed up on. There are volunteer groups out there who will assist, but obviously you've got to watch them for liability, and then the collective bargaining thing's another issue too. So it's, it's an ongoing process, and you have to keep, I think that the presentation I tried to show was that we try to build a consensus that these things are important, and that we needed to at least have a strategy to start or continue moving forward, realizing that we did have these constraints. So there's always going to be issues, but if you don't start somewhere, you end up where? Nowhere, really.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think there was a question just where your plan was, if it was on your website, or is that something that you are going to share with us in an email?
I believe I can share that through email. If it's in final report, I'll check with Melissa Cherubino. She's the director of our department. And I think it still needs to be adopted by the town board. So let me find out, and I'll check with Jen as how we do that.
Yes, I can include a copy of the slides and then a link to or the final plan with the meeting notes. Jeanette had a question. This is, I think, a general question about funding for trails. Transportation costs should be transportation costs regardless of type of transportation. As a community, we should take a percentage of infrastructure costs to always be geared into healthy transportation options. And can this be legislated? I can't answer the can this be legislated question, but at CDTC, we've built into our process when we evaluate projects for the TIP to always to basically set aside funds specifically for bicycle and pedestrian projects. What we have found is that if you evaluate a bicycle and pedestrian project against a bridge project, against a highway project, they don't, they can't compete as well as we recognize the importance, but there's just so many things like traffic volumes and safety and cost benefit that factors into the score that they don't necessarily, they can't be evaluated against each other. So we separate them into types of projects, evaluate them within their project type, and then decide like what percentage of the total funding should go to different types of projects. And all of that is really influenced by the New Visions Plan and our planning and investment principles there. So we do, at CDTC, we do carve out funds for bicycle and pedestrian projects, and we've been very successful in building trails with federal transportation funding. The other issue is that not all transportation funding trails are not an eligible expense for all transportation funding. But again, the current legislation, the FAST Act, is expired. It's in an extension period, and there will be new legislation, a new bill, probably in a year or so. So I think that watching the direction of federal transportation policy is important to understand what the future might be, what might be available, or what is eligible, or what might be evaluated when we are programming projects. So I think that health and climate are two things that are really being integrated into transportation planning, and those are good things. And I think we're going to see more of that and see those things become more of a priority as we move these projects forward. That is a good question.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and in our meeting notes, we'll also provide, if it's okay with Mike, his contact information, his email, and whatnot.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Sure.
Great. Any last questions for Mike?
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we are gonna see if I can jump back into sharing my screen. Can you all see my screen again? I think.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So Tina actually was kind enough to send me this slide, and I'd like to let her talk about it.
Yeah, so I did a presentation to City Council about a new project that's pretty exciting in our area called the Palmertown Range Project, and it's going to be going from Saratoga Springs all the way up to Moreau State Park. And one of the things that I really did want to communicate, and Rails to Trails has put together a really great website if everybody wanted to go to it, and they have a whole COVID resource section. They've done a number of studies. And so I pulled out some of the information in that. And they were just talking about, I think one of the things that we should be communicating, especially to our city councils and to our community at this time, just like Michael had said, if anybody went outside this summer, you've seen a huge explosion in trail and sidewalk usage as well. I live in town, and there were just people out all the time walking everywhere. It's one of the only things that you can do is to get outside. So, trail use is 79% higher than pre-COVID. In the study that they did, they said 78%. It was more important to have access to these places to walk and bike separately from vehicular traffic. But I just thought, I put this together. That's actually my husband, my daughter, and one of the neighbor kids down at the Spa State Park. But, I just think it's really important to communicate right now how much our trails are getting used. And actually, I bought the city an eco multimodal counter. It just got delivered to my office about a week and a half ago. It's sitting on the floor. I haven't even figured out how to use it yet. It's kind of hard putting it out with the snow. But I'm really excited to start using it in the spring and really start trying to put into hard numbers how much people are actually using the trails. Because CDTC did a great study years ago. I think it was 2016, Jen,
Yep.
of trail usage, and being able to communicate, especially how much. I think Railroad Run, we're having like 124,000 annual users, but communicating this to people in the community, showing them the demand for these types of resources, I think is really important. So I just wanted to share that because, Michael was saying, I think something that we all have seen, but I think putting it into hard numbers is important as well.
Yeah, this is really great. Thanks, Tina. I know that, during the summer, we tried to get spot counts on some of the trails to compare to the 2016 numbers. And one of the trails, Zim Smith, we did a count on. We saw, I think it was a 250% increase. And I was like, that can't be right. And then, we double checked it and we talked to the county and they're like, no, that's the right data. We went out and did a count too. It was that much, there was that much of an increase in use. So I think people have, their lifestyles and behaviors have changed during COVID, and, their opinions and preferences on these things have also changed. So these are things that we're gonna keep tracking and, get a good handle on as we move forward. So thank you, Tina. Okay. So other CDTC updates, as many of you know, we put out a mini grant solicitation. We received 7 new proposals. The request for funds is just under what we have available, but we still need to review these projects, make sure all of the components are eligible, and evaluate them and prioritize them. So we will hopefully be in touch with all project sponsors in early March so that people can move forward with their projects. And now I'm going to ask Rima to lead a discussion on Bike Month, which I know was a question last meeting and people have some thoughts on. So Rima, you want to take it?
Yeah, could you let me share my screen?
Oh, absolutely. Let's see. Share. Do. Okay, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, so I'm thinking about bike and walk campaigns for this year. Last year we did a Pledge to Ride campaign, which was just people just promising that they were going to ride a various amount of time for a set period of time. I think it was something like mid-May to like early June or something like that. And people could choose if they wanted to pledge to ride, once a week or every day or, twice a week or something like that. We got about 100 people participating, which was a considerable drop from the 600 or so people who in 2019 participated in the Bike to Work Day events. So since we're still masking and social distancing, in 2021, I'm not holding my breath, assuming that things are gonna get back to normal where we can like be in each other's space. So looking to do something also virtual this year, but maybe trying to expand it a bit to get at ways to replace sort of default SOV trips to other modes. The Pledge campaign last year, the statistics showed that a considerable number of those trips were recreational, and then secondarily were work commutes. And, recreation is wonderful when you're biking and walking, but really sort of the point of these types of campaigns is to try to get people to switch their modes from single occupancy vehicle to something else, not trying to get them to necessarily recreate. So here's a few ideas of things I've been considering for this year.
Rima,
yeah.
Just so you know, like we see your slides in presentation mode.
Oh.
So we see your slide and your next slide. If you want to make it bigger. Not a big deal, but just want to let you know.
How's that? Yay. Okay. So campaign goals. So continue promoting non-SOV mode promotion while masking and social distancing is sort of like the, baseline. We just need to push ahead and figure out how we're going to continue promoting biking, walking, busing, carpooling, etc. Help build support for and increase awareness of infrastructure, such as new and existing bus and bicycle infrastructure, and encourage interested but concerned cyclists to get out there and use their bikes. So what to call it? I've been thinking about calling it maybe a dump the pump campaign. I think it goes beyond a pledge to ride and it goes beyond biking to work. So this is something I was considering. I would welcome feedback on that. So thinking about reintroducing employer teams. I think people sort of like settled into whatever our new normal is for now, and perhaps it might make sense to do employer teams this year. And in 2020, before the pandemic hit, I was planning to add sort of community teams that were county-based, and we could also possibly do family or friend teams too. I don't know. So feedback welcome. So have qualifying trips be biking, walking, carpooling, van pooling, transit trips, and types of activities that would qualify would be errands, your work commute, any trips like, to a service or to school or to visit a family or friend, which hopefully nobody is doing except for with masks, that you would normally do in a car, switching that mode. So things that would not qualify would be SOV modes that would be in a hybrid or an electric vehicle. So really trying to get people to like get out of cars, but when they're by themselves at all. And then also recreational exercise trips. And just to note that National Bike to Work Day is on May 21st. So some possibilities: have the competition based on the total miles traveled using the non-SOV modes and the size of the team. Looking to leverage social media, teams and individuals. We could create a system where teams and individuals could win digital badges by visiting certain locations or doing certain activities, and then posting on social media that they did those things. So for example, if someone was to ride, bike, or bus on some of the newest infrastructure that we have in the region, like the South End Trail or the River Corridor BRT or CDTA Flex, they could win a badge for doing that. And then, so another example would be, maybe a team could win a badge if they get 100% of participation on their employer team. And, other activities like maybe a badge that would award people for the frequency with which they engage in their non-SOV mode. So maybe give somebody a badge for biking or walking or whatever at least 2 times a week. So some other considerations to think about is, how do we reach new people and new businesses? How do we reach walkers? We're pretty good at reaching cyclists and carpoolers and van poolers and transit riders, but not so sure on how to get those walkers involved. And then how do we reach underserved people and communities? What do we do about what do we do with the Bike to Work Day trophies, which it looks like we're going into year 2 of not using them. And then how do we get the schools involved in an event, given that so many students are remote? So these are the things that I've been thinking about. I'm starting to put together a program, but I would like to hear from you all, hear your thoughts about what to do this year. Anybody?
Oh, Rima, you want us to respond now? I wasn't sure how you wanted us to respond.
Yeah, no, now would be great. If you have other thoughts that you'd rather, put down in writing or whatever, you can email me. I can put my email in the chat.
Yeah, we were just discussing that yesterday. We had our Bikatoga meeting last night, and I knew that today was going to happen. So we were actually having discussions on what to do and how to do it for ourselves. We've also been discussing fun activities to do throughout the year, but mostly throughout the month of May, highlighting them. Things like bike bingo and, kids biking to school. How would that work? Well, they're not getting their gym classes now. So clearly we need to get the kids out and getting physical, and biking is really a fun thing that they can do and connect with their friends on. So Bikatoga is in discussion. So I think it would be great to maybe share something, a document, maybe a document we can all contribute to, some ideas. We keep coming up with challenges and games to be played for the month of May, and how to engage the community and support our bigger community as well, our business community during this whole process. Yeah, doing the teams, like bike to work, if people are still even biking to work, that's all, but they can bike from their house. So a lot of bike riding friends that I know that are working from home right now actually get out probably more biking now because they take a midday break and go do a bike ride. So I think there's something that can be done. It's just, what do we focus on as an entire group is what you're looking for to maybe promote it that way?
Yeah, and like I said, last year, a lot of the people who participated in the Pledge to Ride, and just what we're seeing on the trails, what we were talking about earlier, like the 250% increase in usage for the trails. You know, there's a lot of recreational activity that's going on bikes. So, you know, it's okay to promote recreational bike riding, of course, but I'm interested in looking at ways to promote sort of errand riding, commuting. I need to go to the doctor, so I'm going to hop on my bike instead of drive. Those types of trips, or walk, yeah, or take the bus. You know, so looking at ways to promote biking, not just as a recreational activity, but as, you know, as an actual like legitimate transportation mode to get to things where you need to get to.
Well, this is Tina. I recently kind of shared a post with Calgary, because Calgary's had an amazing uptick, and they have really harsh winters, just like Montreal, and both of those places cycle really well. And I kind of wonder about reaching out to some of the transportation people from those cities and to see really how they have been promoting those types of activities, because they have such great participation. And how are they getting people to participate and getting over that mindset that also this is, you know, we do bike to, you know, bike to work during the month of May, but, you know, how do we promote seeing this as an activity that really can go past just great weather days and days that, you know, that you can get out and do things, because I think sometimes it's just getting over the mindset that it's not easy, it's not doable.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's definitely a cultural shift for us in, I'm going to say, upstate New York. But it's not out of reach. It's just everybody on the same page. Like, it needs to be, streets are plowed accordingly so that you can still walk. Roads are cleared accordingly so you can still bike. It just still doesn't feel like that, like the top down is even thinking that anyone else even walks or bikes, that we're all just car drivers. And I think that's a stumbling block that we, as a bike rider and a pedestrian, I continuously run into. Seeing piles of snow taken from the road and piled onto the corners so you can't even see around them or walk over them even. And it just seems to be a natural practice here, not even a consideration that, oh, there might be walkers out in the wintertime. So I don't know, like, how do we change that? That is a thought from the top down. And I think, Tina, your idea of reaching out to them and saying, what do you do from all angles? Because I think it is an all angle address that has to happen, that we have to like address some of the things that are the stumbling blocks, the safety for pedestrians and bicyclists to be out in these conditions. We actually had a slow roll last Sunday, not this past Sunday, a week ago. I think we got 15 or so people out, and it was pretty cold, and yet we all survived. We only did 5 miles or so, but we got people that were never out on their bike before and were thinking they were crazy, but actually ended up enjoying themselves. So it is a stumbling block, Tina, that people just don't think of doing this. So the slow rolls, we're going to continue them. We're having a Valentine's Day one, so we're actually going to do 2 this month. I think they can grow, and maybe the other cities can just call themselves having a slow roll as well, and maybe we create a capital district slow roll for the next and build up to the month of May. I don't know, just an idea.
Yeah, and one of the other things I've been thinking about is community cohesion a lot. You know, especially with sidewalks and sidewalk usage, how sidewalks unite us, like kind of a simple slogan like that. Because when you're outside and you're outside the walls of your car and you're in a bike or you're walking, you interact with people out on the street, and it really does seem to build better community cohesion. So I'm just wondering how you promote these types of activities as, community building as well.
I think that if we don't do it right now, when there's that opportunity with COVID and social distancing and being safe, doing it, I don't know, like, will we do it when people are back to hopping in their cars and going to work or the gym or whatever? I don't know. It is a shift that seems to be very slow and happening. We're doing great stuff. I mean, I love everything. Every time I hear something, it's just great. We're doing it, yet we still have this block that seems to be, and I think it's a mindset. Like, I know we've been up in Canada, in Quebec, and people walk in it's a lot colder there, a lot snowier there, and people are out walking. They walk stylishly. They have beautiful clothing on. It's all warm, and it's a different mindset. And it's like we have to do a paradigm shift with our minds here. We are car centric, and it gets more and more difficult. The more I become active in my transportation, the more frustrated I get, because I see how it could be different for more of us and people could be happier. So my frustration doesn't reflect my happiness when I bike or walk. I'm like, why aren't more people doing this? Why isn't this done this way so more people can do it better? So maybe, I don't know, just hopefully we can address some of these mind blocks cohesively.
I think that continuing to prioritize pedestrians and non-single occupancy vehicle modes can, it's a slow move, but I do see, it does like click with people. It is, I do feel like this is like a slow progress, but I can say that, in the last few years, I do feel like progress has accelerated a little bit more than in previous years, and I am optimistic. Even with like snow removal policy and prioritizing pedestrians in the winter, we're seeing more cities at least pilot snow. It sounds, pilot snow removal on sidewalks. So looking at, what would it cost, or what would it look like for a municipality to be responsible for that versus homeowners or property owners. That's being done and tried in some places. I read a piece this past week about the city of Rochester, and they contract, and I thought this was really interesting from like an urban rural linkage perspective too, is that they contract with farmers who have, these small pieces of equipment that can fit on sidewalks. They can just attach a plow, and they pay farmers to come into the city and plow the sidewalks. Because, when we talk about snow removal and maintenance, these all require, in some cases, like special equipment. And then you have to train staff. So there are additional costs, which isn't to say that should mean we shouldn't do it, but that, shifting quickly to doing it is just more difficult on the, government and budgeting level. But I do think more communities are being proactive about snow removal for pedestrians and trying to figure out a sustainable way to do it on an ongoing basis.
But in terms of the spring and summer,
and there won't be snow, hopefully.
There won't be snow. There better not be.
Yeah.
So, and I'm on the same page with you, Jeanette, about the frustration and the very, very slow progress that we may or may not be making. But there's my immediate interest is, what to do this spring and summer to continue promotion. Since I can't snap my fingers overnight and have everything the way I want it to be, what's that incremental step that I can take this spring and summer to continue with some sort of promotion? So, I mean, I'm not hearing from anybody necessarily that they think, digital badges or community teams or some sort of structure that I propose would be a bad way to go. Does anybody think it's a great idea? Do you think I should be doing something else, that I could be doing something that might be more effective for promoting, trying to help convince people to get out of their cars this spring and summer?
And people, I know maybe people feel like they're on the spot now, but Rima, if you want to put your contact information in the chat and people can reach out.
Yes,
this conversation.
I did. I put my email address in the chat.
Okay.
I can should I send you my PowerPoint slides?
Sure, that'd be good.
Yeah, I can do that too, so you guys can refer back to it.
Hey, Rima, just a side note, in Salt Lake City, Elon Musk basically provided bus transportation or train transportation. He still does it per month for anyone that decides they're not going to use their vehicle from their home to their business. So think about that. How many state workers do we have in the capital region? I'm not saying the state is going to be able to pay out people to pay their bus fees or wherever else, but just brainstorm on that idea. And it could go pretty far. Corporate sponsors, just get people motivated, some type of reward system. You need something to innovate people to do something they're not used to doing. Elon Musk knows how to do that. He's got money. Unfortunately, you don't have a lot. You don't have the money he's got. But that's just, I thought that was pretty interesting. And I saw that firsthand. People hop on the bus. I took the bus to go skiing when I was out there last winter, instead of driving up to Alta or Snowbird. So you got to think about how you want to change the environment. You got to do it. It's got to be done with some, real thought put in, some thought process. Also, I don't think a lot of people are going to work. I worked at General Electric in Schenectady. No one's going to work right now. There's no sign of anyone going back to that campus for months. I don't know if they'll be back in May. So you have that working against you as well. I'm not saying that you should drop it, but I'm just saying there's got to be, you got to open it up to people that maybe what Jeanette was saying, that people are working from home. Maybe people are, instead of driving down the store to get a loaf of bread or carton of milk, they ride their bike or they walk, and that's an incentive versus driving the car.
Right.
Rima, I think whatever you do is make it fun and goofy. I don't know, get some young brains on this that are really in touch with maybe doing goofy stuff. But if the buses are running anyway, why not from the top down offer free, ditch the pump, hop on the bus kind of promotion for whoever is still going to work or errands and to the supermarket and wherever they're traveling to. I'm fortunate I can walk or bike ride here, but I still get in my car to go to the supermarket up by exit 15. And I hate doing it. I hate getting in my car to go to the supermarket, but I have too many groceries. So, there's some things you can still do. Most of the time, my errands to the post office or the drugstore I can walk to, and I do that. So, but others will not. I know friends who drive, who live closer to downtown, and they drive when they go run their errands. So I think that kind of a promotion is important right now, and connecting us to community, like Tina was saying, is something that might be the way to go with this. You know, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out, like, how can we be creative on running errands and you know, running to the drugstore or the post office. You know, most of us are sitting here having things delivered to us, which is not necessarily ditching the pump. It's you know, we're using more of those things. So how can we, like, maybe build on that, like walk to your local store and, you know, instead of having things delivered, have, you know, walk there or bike there, or something on that mindset as
Yeah.
a switch, something creative and fun that says, you know, go support your local businesses. Like, I don't know, I'm just spewing now because I can't even come up with like a concept that would get all of us to stop using these very convenient things that have become good for us during the pandemic, but kind of changing it to help out our local businesses and I mean, everything seems to be about local now. You, at the Super Bowl commercials were all about support your local this. There's a new thing happening Thursday where you can go out and have a meal local in a local restaurant and get half of your meal paid for. So there's that kind of thing seems to be happening. If we could tie it in with transportation, I don't know, I think that could even grow, like walk to your local restaurant or walk to your local deli and we'll do, you know, you can earn this. Or, I mean, we have in Saratoga, we have bicycle benefits, not just in Saratoga. But it's, if you ride with the bicycle benefit sticker on your helmet to a number of local businesses, you can get a discount of some sort. Some can be like a free cookie at the local deli or $1 off your sub, or so there's that kind of thing. And bicycle benefits is available if you want to look and see how that works as a prototype or something to use in the capital region to get, it's already established that just needs, it's established in Saratoga. I don't think it's established in any of the cities, but it's in many other towns across the country. And it's an interesting concept to reward people for running errands and not getting in cars.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I like the idea of partnering with local businesses to promote better transportation choices and, you know, engaging with the local economy. So yeah, that's a great idea. I'm gonna look into that.
Okay.
Stewart's may be a good example of a store that is all over, and I can't conceive of bringing all my groceries that I now only go once a week or maybe once every week and a half. I can't do that on my bike, but I certainly can bring that one milk and a loaf of bread back on my bike. So Stewart's or the local banks, same things. By the way, getting in line at the bank with your bike or as a pedestrian in the car line is kind of fun. I can recommend it. The cars are very accommodating. I stand in line, walk along up to the teller's automatic window.
Yeah, I've done it with a stroller.
Um,
All right.
Okay.
So if if folks have other ideas or anything, please email Rima and we will keep everyone updated on how the program develops. So CDTC has another meeting in a few minutes, so I'm going to try and get through these slides fairly quickly. Can everyone see my screen again? Okay. So I had mentioned last meeting that updates to the MUTCD have been made and that there's a public comment period. This period was extended to May 14th. If this is something you're interested in taking a look at, there is a link to it and I can provide that in the notes. I'm hoping in the next couple months to have a summary to everyone on these updates and, you know, CDTC's thoughts on them from the perspective of our New Visions goals. This is, you know, the MUTCD hasn't really been revamped since 2009. And I think that there's a lot of interest in really rethinking it, but we'll see where this goes. And I'll provide a link if anyone wants to take a look at this. The status of CDTC planning initiatives as of the 1st of this month, the Albany Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan is winding down and almost completed. I think I saw Zach on the call. I don't know if he has anything he wants to add on this.
We're just working on creating an executive summary right now with the consultant based on some feedback from our advisory committees. So that's added a little bit of time to the project timeline. So we should be finishing the plan by the end of the month. But yeah, we are just starting to wind down at this point. Okay.
And maybe we'll get a presentation to the Bike Ped Advisory Committee on the final plan at some point.
Yeah, Carrie had reached out to me with the request for a presentation. So I think we're doing that next month.
Okay, great. The Ballston Spa Pedestrian and Bicycle Master Plan is in early stages, but is moving forward. Hoosick Hillside study is complete. And we got a presentation on that last month or the month before. And then there's also the Manans project, which is just getting started, and the Scotia Downtown Connections Plan, which is just getting started. In addition to Linkage, CDTC has the Technical Assistance Program, which we're currently not accepting new proposals for, but there are various ongoing projects like the Enhanced Development Regulations for the town of Colony, the Gilligan Road Complete Streets Enhancement, which we did hear about last week, Regional Growth and Infrastructure Capacity Analysis. And these projects are done in coordination with the Capital District Regional Planning Commission. So we work with them to provide these, you know, kind of small scale types of technical assistance to them. The Western Clifton Park Development and Conservation Trends Analysis, the Comprehensive Plan Update, Guidance and Data for the Village of Ballston Spa, and the Hoffman Hill Road Safety Analysis in the town of Glenville. Another big initiative that CDTC has completed is the update of our public participation plan. This really, you know, outlines the goals of CDTC's public engagement and outreach process. It also includes a list of strategies on innovative ways for CDTC to connect with the community. And if you are doing public participation and are interested, you know, we are also happy for others to use our, at least the strategy section of our participation plan just for ideas, because I do think it gives a good variety, both in person and virtual, and some information on those to help you integrate them into the scopes of your public participation plan components of any study or project. This was approved by our planning committee earlier last week and will move to be presented to the policy board next month. And it is required that they approve it and adopt it for it to be official. New Visions 2050. We are continuing to do, we're continuing to add activities and workshops and opportunities in this implementation phase. If your town board, city council, planning board, zoning board is interested, we are offering virtual trainings. There is a link on our website that will let you complete a request form. I can tailor a training or presentation to the specific governing body that would like to participate. You can, if a town or city approves them, they can be used as Department of State credits, or they're eligible for the training and education requirements for planning and zoning boards. We are continuing the virtual learning series. So next week, this month, we have a webinar on aging and mobility. So we'll talk about our coordinated plan. And we also have a guest presenter from AARP that will talk about their livability initiatives and the work that they're doing here in the region. March 16th will be focused on safety. So regional traffic safety trends. We've did a webinar on pedestrian safety, but this will be much broader and talk about all the different safety issues in the region. April 20th will be on performance measures. What performance measures are in New Vision, what performance measures are required in the FAST Act, how we're achieving them. Our guest presenter will be from Federal Highways. So if you are getting ready to maybe submit a project proposal for the TIP next year, that might be a good webinar for you. And then May 18th, May is Bike Month. So we will be focusing on moving bicycling forward in the capital region. So just for time today, I'll skip doing individual updates or anything. If you have them, please email them to me. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 9th. Again, it will be via Zoom, so you will have to register beforehand. And I will send out today's meeting notes with an agenda, hopefully as soon as possible. So I thank everyone today for joining us, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their week and rest of February. So see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please look at the Rossi Junction attachment, which you kindly had provided to your.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, Ivan. Yeah, sorry. I'll be in touch with you about that.
Thank you.
Well, it's self-explanatory, and it's a very interesting and important person to remember. But at the same time, it also will improve a corner of the current Mohawk Hudson Bike Trail.
Yes. Thank you.